Welcome to BL Without Labels, where the story isn't defined by words. Stay with the story. Support us. My shy boyfriend has multiple personality disorder. Now he is calling me Wifey. Chapter 1. I thought he was just flirting. Let me start with myself. My name is Calyx. I'm not dramatic by nature. I like quiet mornings, warm drinks, and people who don't demand too much noise from the world. I fall in love slowly. I stay longer than I should, and I have a habit of explaining things as if I already know how they end. I didn't, though. Not with him. His name is Minjae. If you had asked me at the beginning, I would have said he was shy. Genuinely shy. The kind of person who listens more than he speaks, who nods instead of interrupting, who lowers his eyes when he laughs like he's embarrassed by his own happiness. That's who I met. On our first date, he held his cup with both hands. Didn't reach across the table. Didn't flirt. When I teased him lightly, his ears turned red and he apologized for nothing at all. I remember thinking, oh, you're gentle. And I like gentle. So when we started dating, I learned his quiet habits. The way he stood a little too far from others. The way his texts were careful, reread before sending. The way he asked permission with his eyes before touching me, even after weeks. That was my boyfriend. Which is why I didn't question it the first time he changed. It happened one evening at my place. Nothing special. No build-up. We were on the couch, half watching something forgettable. I was rambling about my day when he interrupted me. You know, he said casually, you look really good when you talk too much. I stopped mid-sentence. Not because of what he said. Because of how he said it. His voice was different. Lower. Warm. Confident in a way Minjae never was. He was looking at me directly, no flinching, no shyness. Just steady, daring amusement. I laughed, because that's what you do when something unexpected leans too close. You're in a good mood today. He smiled. Not the small, nervous one. The smile lingered, took its time, like it knew exactly what it was doing. Maybe, he said, or maybe you just bring it out in me. Then he leaned closer. Close enough that his knee pressed against mine without asking. His fingers settled on my wrist like they belonged there. No apology. No hesitation. Unacceptable. Charming. Shameless. I remember thinking, oh, he's flirting. I remember thinking, he must be really happy. What I didn't think, what never crossed my mind, was that this wasn't a mood, that this wasn't a phase, that this wasn't my shy boyfriend discovering confidence. Because later that night, he was quiet again. Soft. Almost embarrassed. He asked if he'd talked too much. If he'd been strange. He avoided my eyes like he was afraid of what he might see there. He had no memory of pressing me into the couch. No memory of the way he said my name like it tasted good. No memory of the heat he'd left behind. I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, listening to the same steady heartbeat I always did. Same person. Same body, same breath warming my shoulder. But earlier, when he looked at me with that bold, daring smile, he didn't feel like Minjae. Later, I would learn his name, Min, and he would remember everything. Chapter 2, he introduced himself with a kiss. I didn't meet Min the way people usually meet someone new. He met me. It was a Thursday. I remember because Thursdays are boring, and nothing life-altering is supposed to happen on boring days. Minjae was quiet all evening, softer than usual. He sat beside me with his hands folded in his lap, shoulders tucked in like he was trying to take up less space. When I brushed my thumb over his knuckles, he startled and whispered sorry. For what? I didn't know. I kissed his temple and told him to relax. He nodded, relieved, and leaned against me like a cat finally deciding the lap was safe. 10 minutes later, he sat up, too smoothly. Too confidently. The shift was so sudden it stole the air from my lungs. He turned to me with a smile that absolutely did not belong to the boy who had apologized for breathing too loud. Well, he said, stretching the word lazily. You look shocked. I stared at him. Same face. Same mouth. Completely different presence. He leaned back into the couch like he owned it. Like he owned the space between us. One arm draped along the backrest, relaxed and dangerous. His eyes moved over me slowly, unapologetically, as if I were something familiar and deeply enjoyed. "Relax," he said easily. "You always get this quiet when you don't know what to do with me." I opened my mouth, closed it, tried again. Nothing came out. He chuckled. "That's new." I huffed a breath, half laughing, half stunned. "You're—" "Yes." He cut in smoothly, leaning closer. "I know." My heart was doing something reckless. He tilted his head, studying me, then smiled wider. "Shameless, charming, unfair. Name's Min," he said. "Nice to finally meet you properly." Before I could process that, his fingers hooked gently under my chin and lifted my face. It was ridiculous how easily my body followed. "This," he murmured, voice low and warm, "is where you start overthinking." Then he kissed me, not hesitant, not careful. A kiss that smiled against my mouth, confident, teasing, playful, like he was daring me to react. I made a very undignified sound and pushed weakly at his chest. "You can't just do that." He pulled back just enough to laugh. "I absolutely can. You're unbelievable." "And yet," he said, brushing another quick kiss against my lips, "you haven't moved." Heat rushed up my neck. I was laughing, flustered, entirely undone by the way he looked at me, like this was fun, like I was fun. "So," I said, trying and failing to sound steady, "do you flirt like this with everyone?" He leaned in again, nose brushing mine. "Only my wifey." I froze. "You're what?" He beamed, proud, shameless, completely unrepentant. "Wifey. You can't just say that." "I just did." He kissed the corner of my mouth, quick and playful. "Don't panic. You suit it." My face was burning. "You're ridiculous." He hummed. "But you're smiling." I hated that he was right. And then, just like that, he was gone. Minjae blinked beside me, posture folding inward again, confusion written all over his face. "Did I zone out?" he asked softly. "I'm sorry. Was I acting strange?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. He didn't remember the kiss. Didn't remember the flirting. Didn't remember calling me wifey like it was the most natural thing in the world. I swallowed, heart still racing. "No," I said gently. "You weren't strange." Relief washed over his face. He leaned back against me, quiet and warm and familiar, and I sat there, staring at the wall, cheeks hot, mind spinning. I didn't feel scared. I felt intrigued, and somewhere inside that curiosity, between the laughter and the shock, was the echo of a voice that sounded entirely too pleased with itself. Chapter 3: The Part He Forgot. What bothered me wasn't Min. It was what came after him. Minjae woke up the next morning shy and soft and polite, like nothing unusual had happened. He stood in my kitchen holding a mug with both hands, eyes downcast, shoulders tucked in. "Did I say anything weird last night?" he asked quietly. I stared at him. This was the same mouth that had kissed me, the same voice that had called me wifey like it was a promise and a joke at the same time. Yet he looked at me now like he was afraid he'd taken up too much space. "No," I said slowly. "You didn't." He smiled in relief, small and grateful, and thanked me for letting him stay over, as if he hadn't already claimed my couch, my attention, my breath. That's when it hit me. He really didn't remember. Not pretending, not teasing, not embarrassed. Forgot. The realization sat heavy in my chest all day. I replayed the night in fragments. Min's grin, his confidence, the heat of his kisses, and tried to place them somewhere that made sense. People don't forget things like that. Not the good ones. Not the bold ones. That evening it happened again. We were talking about nothing when his posture shifted. His shoulders relaxed. His eyes lifted, sharp and bright, like someone had turned a light on inside him. "Well," Min said pleasantly, "you're staring." My heart jumped. "You?" He smiled. "Hi again." I didn't answer right away. I was too busy trying to understand how someone could walk into a room that already belonged to them. "You look troubled," he went on, stepping closer. "That's new. You said something yesterday." I blurted. And today you didn't remember it. His expression didn't change. Not much. Ah, he said lightly. That, I echoed. You called me. Wifey. He grinned. Yeah, I remember. My stomach flipped. He didn't. Min studied me for a moment. Then he smiled again, softer this time. Less teasing. He usually doesn't. That should have scared me. Instead, it confused me more. You say that like it's normal, I said. For me, he shrugged. It is. Then, because apparently chaos was his favorite hobby, he leaned in and kissed me again. Quick, familiar, like he was reminding me of something. You still make that face, he murmured. Like you're trying to solve me. I'm not, I said weakly. Liar. He brushed his thumb over my cheek. It's okay. Take your time. Stop calling me that, I added, heat rising. He laughed. No. Why not? Because, he said, pressing his forehead to mine. You haven't told me you hate it. When Min-jae came back later, confused, apologetic, asking if he'd spaced out again, I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I just shook my head and pulled him close. Because I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know why part of him stayed and another part vanished. All I knew was this. Something was slipping through the cracks of his memory. And whatever it was, still knew my name. Chapter 4, the rules I didn't mean to learn. I didn't mean to start keeping track. It just happened. Min-jae liked mornings. Quiet ones. He moved through them gently, like the day might bruise if he was too loud. He asked before opening windows, before changing music, before touching me, even when his hand was already halfway there. Is this okay? He'd ask, eyes hopeful and unsure. It always was. Min liked evenings. I figured that out by accident. Min-jae would grow tired as the sun went down. Quieter, softer. He apologized more. Sometimes he'd trail off mid-sentence, like his thoughts were slipping somewhere he couldn't follow. And then, sometimes, someone else would finish the sentence. You worry too much, Min said one night, leaning against the doorframe like he'd always been there. I jumped. You didn't even knock. He smiled. No, I don't. Of course he didn't. He walked over, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to look at him. His confidence wasn't loud. It was easy, worn like a favorite jacket. You're doing that thing again, he added. What thing? The thinking. He tapped my forehead lightly. Dangerous habit. I'm allowed to think, I muttered. Sure, he said, but you're terrible at hiding it. Then, because he had absolutely no sense of mercy, he leaned in and murmured, Relax, wifey. I groaned and covered my face. You're doing this on purpose. He laughed, delighted. Every time. Why? Because you blush, he said simply. And because he never would. That stopped me. I lowered my hands. Min's smile didn't fade, but something in his eyes sharpened. Just a fraction. You're observant, he said lightly. Careful. That's how people get in trouble. I'm not trying to. I stopped, exhaled. You say things he doesn't remember. Yes. You do things he doesn't remember. Yes. And you're okay with that. Min tilted his head, studying me. Then he shrugged. I remember everything, he said. Someone has to. Before I could ask what that meant, he kissed me. Not teasing this time. Not playful. Just brief and warm and grounding. Like punctuation at the end of a sentence I wasn't ready to read yet. When Min-jae came back, it was messy. He blinked at me like he'd woken from a nap he didn't remember taking. His shoulders curled inward. His voice softened. Did I say something wrong? He asked. You're quiet. I shook my head immediately. No, you didn't. He relaxed, relief washing over his face so quickly it hurt to watch. I'm glad, he said. I don't like making things awkward. I almost laughed. Later, lying beside him, listening to his steady breathing, I stared into the dark and thought about rules. Unspoken ones. Min-jae needed patience. Min needed restraint. And I needed to stop reacting like everything was normal when it very clearly wasn't. But the strangest part? I wasn't scared. I wasn't angry. I was just caught in the middle of something unfinished. And every time Min whispered wifey like a joke only he was in on, somewhere inside me something answered. Chapter 5, the name for the quiet space between them. I didn't tell Min-jae I was going to the doctor. That alone should tell you how serious I was. I told myself I was just asking questions. Hypothetical ones. The kind people ask when they're curious, not terrified of misstepping something fragile. But my hands shook the entire time. The doctor listened without interrupting. That was the first thing that scared me. No raised eyebrow. No quick dismissal. Just attention, steady and careful like he was handling glass. I talked about memory gaps. About shifts in posture, voice, touch. About how one version of my boyfriend remembered everything and the other remembered nothing at all. And neither seems aware of the other? He asked. One is, I said quietly. The other isn't. He nodded slowly. When he said the words dissociative identity disorder, they didn't land like a diagnosis. They landed like a map. He explained it gently. Trauma responses. Protective mechanisms. How some minds learn to survive by splitting responsibility. How one part carries memory so the other can keep living. Neither is fake, he said. Neither is pretending. I swallowed. They're both him. Yes, the doctor said. Just not at the same time. That sentence stayed with me. Not at the same time. On the walk home, everything rearranged itself inside my chest. Min wasn't reckless. Min-jae wasn't weak. They were doing a careful dance I'd stumbled into without knowing the steps. I remembered Min's confidence. The way he watched rooms like he was guarding something precious. I remembered Minji's apologies for things he hadn't done. His fear of taking up space. Memory and innocence. Protection and gentleness. Two hands holding the same life from opposite sides. When I got home, Min-jae was in the kitchen, struggling heroically with a jar he refused to admit was stuck. Need help? I asked. He startled, then smiled sheepishly. I was about to get it. I took the jar, opened it easily and handed it back. He stared. Wow! I laughed. And then, without thinking, I touched his wrist, just to feel him there. He froze for half a second, not pulling away, just surprised. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I said, and this time it was true. That night, Min came out quietly. He didn't announce himself. He never did when it mattered. You went somewhere today, he said, sitting beside me on the couch. I nodded. I did. And I know, I said. He went still. The air between us tightened, not with fear, but with anticipation. You have a name for it now, he said. Yes. And you're still here. I turned to him. I didn't go to leave. For the first time since I'd known him, Min looked unsure. People usually do, he said lightly. I reached for his hand before he could pull away. Then they didn't love you both, I said. That did it. His composure cracked. Not dramatically, just enough for me to see the exhaustion underneath. The weight of remembering everything alone. Promise me something, he said quietly. What? Don't force him to know before he's ready. I nodded. I won't. I nodded. I won't. And don't forget, he added, squeezing my hand, that I chose you too. I smiled, throat tight. I know. Later, when Min-jae returned, he curled into my side like he always did, warm and trusting. I feel lighter, he murmured, like I slept really well. I kissed his hair. I'm glad. And for the first time, loving him didn't feel like guessing. Felt like commitment, not to one version, but to the whole truth. Chapter 6, Min owns the night. Min only ever comes in the evening. I noticed the pattern long before I understood it. Daytime belonged to Min-jae. Soft-spoken, careful, apologetic in the way he moved through the world like he was afraid of leaving fingerprints behind. Night apparently belonged to Min. I was folding laundry when it happened. The light outside had turned that quiet blue, the kind that settles just before night fully claims the sky. Min-jae had been sitting on the bed a moment ago, quietly scrolling through his phone, shoulders rounded, humming under his breath. Then, the air shifted. Not dramatically, just decisively. I didn't turn around immediately. I felt it first, that familiar prickle at the back of my neck, like someone stepping too close without touching. You know? A voice drawled behind me, lower and smoother than it had been seconds ago. This lighting is doing very unfair things to you. I froze. Slowly, I turned. Min was leaning against the headboard, arms crossed, eyes dark and amused, mouth curved like he'd been waiting all day for this moment. Evening, wifey. My heart stumbled. You? I swallowed. You're early. He smiled. Miss me? I was with Minjae. Yes, he said calmly. I know. That shouldn't have sounded comforting. Somehow it did. He pushed himself upright and crossed the room in unhurried steps, stopping far too close. His presence pressed in heat, confidence, intention. You look tense, he murmured, fingers brushing my wrist as he reached past me for a shirt. Not grabbing, never grabbing, just there. I'm fine, I said, voice betraying me immediately. Liar, he replied fondly. He leaned in, breath warm against my ear. You always get like this when you're pretending you don't want me to ruin your evening. I shivered. That's not. He kissed my neck, soft at first, then slower, intentional. His mouth lingered just long enough to make my knees threaten betrayal before he pulled back, satisfied. I made a sound I absolutely did not mean to make. Min laughed quietly. There it is. You're impossible, I muttered. And you, he said, eyes dropping to my lips, are very reactive. He backed me gently toward the bed, one step at a time, until my knees hit the mattress. He didn't push. He didn't need to. I sat. He stayed standing. Power move. You know what I like best? He asked. I didn't answer. He leaned down, hands braced on either side of my thighs, caging without touching. That you never tell me to stop convincingly. My pulse was loud in my ears. This is teasing, I accused. Absolutely, he agreed. Cruelly so. He kissed me then. Deeper than before, unhurried, tasting like he had all night. When he pulled back, my hands were gripping his shirt without my permission. He noticed. Of course he did. Careful, he murmured. Minji's hands shake when he wants things. Min, I warned. He smiled, wicked and soft all at once. Say it again. I didn't. He kissed me again anyway. By the time he finally pulled away, my head was spinning, lips swollen, heart racing like I'd been running. Then, just like that, he exhaled. His shoulders relaxed. His posture folded inward. Minjae blinked up at me, confused, hands hovering awkwardly between us. He said softly. Why are you sitting like that? I stared at him. My mouth opened, closed. No reason, I managed. He frowned slightly. Your face is red. I'm fine. He hesitated, then leaned forward and pressed a shy kiss to my cheek. Good. And just like that, he curled beside me, unaware of the chaos that had just wrecked my nervous system. Inside my head, a familiar voice murmured, pleased and smug. Sweet dreams, wifey. I closed my eyes. Evenings were dangerous. Chapter 7, Min knows who I look at. Minjae doesn't get jealous. I know that because I've seen him try. He listens politely when someone laughs a little too hard at my jokes. He steps aside when hands linger on my arm for a second too long. He smiles, small and apologetic, like love is something he's grateful for but doesn't feel allowed to guard. Minjae never asks questions. Min does. I found out the night I mentioned another name. It slipped out casually, a coworker, harmless, forgettable. Someone who had walked me home because it was late. Someone who had smiled. That was all. Minjae had nodded, soft and trusting, and wished me good night with a shy kiss to my cheek before drifting off beside me. An hour later, the room changed. I didn't even have to look to know. So, Min said quietly, from the darkness, who is he? I sat up slowly. Who? The one who walks you home, he replied, tone easy. Too easy. The one you smiled about. I didn't. You did, he interrupted gently. Just a little. He was propped on one elbow now, eyes sharp in the low light, watching me like nothing escaped him. Gone was the playful teasing, the lazy flirtation. This was something else. He's just a coworker, I said carefully. Min hummed. Low. Thoughtful. Does he touch you? My stomach flipped. No. Does he look at you like he wants to? That's not. Min reached out then, fingers closing around my wrist. Not hard. Firm. Possessive in a way that made my breath catch before I could stop it. You see, he said softly. Min-jae wouldn't notice that. I swallowed. But I do. He leaned in, close enough that his forehead brushed mine. His jealousy wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was intimate. He doesn't get to stand where I stand, Min continued, voice calm but edged. He doesn't get to hear your breathing change. He doesn't get to know the way you melt when someone says your name like it matters. Min, I warned, breathless. He smiled, slow, dangerous. I don't mind sharing a body, he murmured. But I don't share you. Then he kissed me. Not playful. Claiming. His hand slid to my jaw, thumb pressing lightly beneath my lip like he was reminding me where my attention belonged. I made a soft sound before I could stop myself. See, he whispered against my mouth. That sound isn't for him. My heart was pounding. You're jealous, I said. Terribly, he agreed without shame. Isn't it romantic? You're impossible. And yet, he said, kissing me once more, slower now, sweeter. You're still mine. When he pulled away, his expression softened just a fraction. I won't hurt him, he added. I'm not cruel. Then, amused again, unless he forgets. And just like that, he was gone. Min-jae stirred beside me, blinking sleepily. Did you say something? He asked, voice thick with dreams. I shook my head, heart still racing. No, go back to sleep. He smiled faintly and turned toward me, trusting, warm, unaware. I held him close. Inside my chest, Min's jealousy lingered like a warning. And somewhere deep down, I realized something unsettling. Min-jae loved me gently, but Min loved me like he was afraid of losing me. Chapter 8, The Way I Love Min-jae. People think loving someone like this must be confusing. It isn't. It's layered. Min-jae is the part of my life that feels like morning light. Not bright, not demanding, just there, steady and warm, like it never needs to prove itself. He wakes before I do, even when he tries not to. I'll feel him shift carefully, like he's afraid of disturbing the air itself. Sometimes I pretend to sleep just to watch him exist without noticing me. He sits on the edge of the bed, rubbing his eyes, breath soft, hair a mess, completely real. Did I wake you? He asks every time. Even when I say no, he apologizes anyway. That's Min-jae. He loves like he's grateful I stayed. When I hold his hand, he laces our fingers slowly, checking if it's okay. When he kisses me, it's careful, like he's learning my mouth all over again each time. His affection doesn't rush. It waits, and I let it, because Min-jae doesn't take. He offers. There are moments, quiet ones, when he looks at me like he's memorizing my face, like he's afraid the world might change while he isn't watching. Once I asked him why he stared like that. He panicked. I'm sorry, he said quickly. I didn't mean to be strange. I laughed and kissed his knuckles. You're not strange. He relaxed then, leaned into me, rested his forehead against my shoulder like that was enough to keep him safe. Min-jae doesn't know about Min. Not really. He knows he forgets things, knows there are gaps, knows sometimes I look at him like I'm carrying more than one conversation in my head. He worries about it. I hope I don't disappoint you, he whispered once, out of nowhere. I feel like parts of me are missing. That broke something in me. I held his face in my hands and told him the truth. Just not all of it. There's nothing missing, I said. You're just more than you think. He cried quietly after that. Not because he was sad, because he felt seen. And that's when I understood. Min-jae is not the absence of boldness. He is restraint. He is gentleness. He is love that doesn't demand to be loud to be real. Min loves me fiercely, but Min-jae loves me faithfully. When Min-jae curls into my chest at night, breath evening out, trusting me with all the things he doesn't know how to say, I feel it clearly. This is the man I choose every morning. This is the man who doesn't need to claim me, because he believes I stay. I love Min-jae, not despite his quiet, because of it. And if Min is the voice that protects what Min-jae is afraid to lose, then loving Min-jae means loving the courage he never knew he had. Chapter 9. Loving the whole of him. Acceptance didn't arrive like a realization. It arrived like relief. I stopped asking myself why one day and started asking how long I had already known. Min isn't a stranger living inside Min-jae. He's a voice Min-jae never learned how to use. That truth settled into me slowly, the way certain truths do, soft, heavy, undeniable. Min-jae is careful because he had to be. He learned early how to make himself smaller, quieter, easier to love. His desires folded inward, stacked neatly, never demanding space. Min is what happens when those desires finally breathe. The confidence, the possessiveness, the shameless affection. None of it feels foreign anymore. It feels protective. I realized it the evening Min-jae apologized again for nothing at all. I feel bad, he said softly, fingers twisting together. I think I forgot something important. I took his hands and kissed his knuckles the same way I always do. You didn't forget love, I said. That's the only thing that matters. He smiled, small and unsure, but relieved. Later, Min came, not loud, not teasing, just present. You figured it out, he said quietly. I didn't pretend I hadn't. You're not stealing anything from him, I replied. You're carrying what he can't. Min studied me for a long moment, something unguarded in his eyes. He doesn't mind? He asked. That question mattered more than any flirtation ever had. He doesn't feel bothered, I said, because you're not separate to him. You're him without fear. Min exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding that breath for a long time. I only ever wanted to keep him safe, he admitted, and to love you the way he wishes he could say out loud. I know, I said, and I meant it. Loving Min-jae means loving his silence. Loving Min means loving his voice. They are not opposites. They are the same heart, choosing different languages. Min-jae doesn't know everything, but he knows this, I stay. And Min understands something else now. He isn't an interruption. He isn't excess. He is Min-jae's courage, finally allowed to exist. And I love him, not instead of Min-jae, but because loving Min-jae means loving all of him. Even the parts that learned how to speak only at night. Chapter 10. When he finally exhaled. Something changed when Min-jae stopped apologizing. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just less. He started sleeping through the night without waking in a panic he couldn't explain. His shoulders didn't stay hunched like he was bracing for impact. When he laughed, it lasted a second longer before he caught himself. It was subtle enough that no one else would notice. I did. One evening, we sat on the floor with our backs against the couch, sharing takeout straight from the boxes. Min-jae hummed softly to himself, distracted, content. At some point, he leaned his head against my shoulder without asking. No hesitation. No glance to check if it was okay. Just trust. I froze for half a heartbeat, then relaxed into it. He sighed. A real sigh. Deep, like something inside him had finally unclenched. Are you tired? I asked quietly. He shook his head. No. I just feel calm. The word surprised him as much as it did me. Later that night, Min came, but gently. No teasing. No heat. No claiming. He sat beside me on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, expression thoughtful. He's lighter, he said. I nodded. He is. Min was quiet for a long moment. Then, softer than I'd ever heard him. I don't need to be so loud anymore. That felt important. You don't have to disappear, I said. I know, he replied. Faint smile. I just don't need to shout to be heard. Min-jae stirred then, half awake, reaching for me in his sleep. His fingers found mine easily, instinctively. Min watched, not with jealousy, with something like pride. He's learning how to breathe, Min murmured. I think I can let him. And just like that, he stepped back. Not gone, just resting. Min Jae woke in the morning smiling for no reason he could name. He stretched, kissed my cheek, and didn't ask if he'd done something wrong. That was new. As he left the room, I felt it. Quiet, steady, present. Min wasn't pushing. Min Jae wasn't afraid. For the first time, they weren't pulling in opposite directions. They were sharing the same breath. And loving him suddenly felt less like balance, and more like home. Chapter 11, When Confidence Forgot to Ask Permission. Min Jae didn't mean to be bold. That's the important part. It happened on a normal day, in a normal place with nothing dramatic about it at all. We were at a small cafe, too bright, too loud, the kind of place that usually made him shrink a little. He didn't. We sat side by side, knees touching under the table. I was distracted, scrolling through my phone, half listening to someone behind us talk too loudly about nothing important. That's when Min Jae reached out and took my hand. No hesitation, no checking my face, just fingers sliding into mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. I looked at him, surprised. He was focused on the menu, completely unaware that he'd just done something new, something brave. His thumb brushed my knuckle absently, a small, grounding motion. You want the sweet one or the bitter one? He asked, voice calm. I blinked. The sweet. Okay. He smiled, satisfied, and didn't let go. It hit me then, warm and sharp all at once. Min Jae wasn't borrowing confidence. He was growing it. Across the table, I felt it before I heard it. Min, not fully present, not stepping in, just watching, amused. Look at him, Min said quietly in my head. Didn't even realize he claimed you. I swallowed a smile. When the barista flirted, harmless, casual, Min Jae didn't retreat. He didn't apologize. He simply leaned closer to me, shoulder brushing mine, presence unmistakable. Oh, Min murmured internally, pleased. That's new. The barista backed off. Min Jae didn't notice. Later, as we walked home, he talked more than usual. Not loud, not showy, just sure. His steps matched mine. His hands stayed in mine. You seem different today, I said gently. He frowned, thinking. Different, bad. No, I said quickly. Different like relaxed. He considered that, then nodded. I feel safer lately. That word stayed with me. That night, Min surfaced, but carefully. He didn't touch, didn't tease. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching Min Jae brush his teeth, humming softly, completely at ease in his own skin. Well, Min said, smiling to himself. Would you look at that? Min Jae glanced up at the mirror, confused. Look at what? Min didn't answer him. He answered me. I think he doesn't need me to push anymore, Min said quietly. I can spot him now, just in case. I looked at Min Jae, gentle, steady, confident without realizing it. You're still part of him, I said. Min nodded. I know. Min Jae came to bed and curled into me without asking, arm draped over my waist like it belonged there. He fell asleep faster than usual, peacefully. Min watched for a moment longer, then stepped back, smiling. Not because he was fading, but because Min Jae was finally stepping forward. And I lay there between all the versions of the man I loved, realizing something simple and profound. We weren't surviving this anymore. We were growing. Special chapter for BL Without Labels subscribers. The day Min Jae stopped asking permission. I should have known something was wrong when Min Jae didn't apologize. He didn't apologize for cutting me off mid-sentence. Didn't apologize for standing too close. Didn't apologize for the look. That look. He leaned against the kitchen counter like it was a deliberate choice. Arms crossed, posture loose, eyes sharp with amusement. Not nervous. Not tentative. Present. Confident. Min Jae, why are you looking at me like that? I asked carefully. He smiled. Not shy. Not small. A smile that took its time. Like what? He asked. Like you're about to do something illegal. He considered that. Actually considered it. Then said, that depends on your definition of illegal. I choked on air. Since when do you talk like that? He pushed off the counter and walked toward me. Slow, deliberate, every step unhurried. No hesitation, no second guessing. He stopped close enough that I could feel his body heat. I've always thought like this, he said calmly. I just didn't think I was allowed to. My heart started misbehaving. He reached out and tugged lightly at my shirt, just enough to pull me in. Not rough, not desperate, certain. You react, he continued, eyes flicking to my mouth. Every time I do this, I swallowed. Min Jae. He leaned in and kissed my jaw. Not rushed, not unsure. A slow, intentional kiss that made my knees go weak. I made a very undignified sound. Oh, he said softly, clearly pleased. That one. I stared at him. You're enjoying this. He nodded. A lot. Then, because the universe has a sense of humor, he backed me against the counter with one hand braced beside my hip. Still gentle, still careful, but confident enough to be dangerous. You always look like you're waiting for me to disappear, he said quietly. I don't want to anymore. Something warm cracked open in my chest. You don't have to, I said. I know, he replied, and then, grinning, that's why I'm kissing you again. He did. Short, smug, absolutely unfair. When he pulled back, my face was on fire and he looked relaxed, grounded, like he'd finally stepped into his own body without fear. So, he said, tilting his head, is this too much? I laughed, breathless. You're a menace. He smiled, unapologetic. I'm learning. Later, much later. He curled into me on the couch, fingers laced with mine, completely at ease. No guilt, no fear, no pieces missing. I think, he murmured half asleep, I like being like this. I kissed his hair. I know, because this wasn't someone else. This wasn't a replacement. This was Min Jae, finally letting himself want, tease, flirt, and love out loud. And honestly, I was never going to survive him. So, yeah, my shy boyfriend had more confidence than I ever imagined. Turns out it was just waiting for the right moment to speak up. I didn't lose Min Jae. I didn't gain someone new. I just learned that love can be quiet and loud, soft and shameless, sometimes in the same body. And if you're wondering, yes, he still calls me wifey. No, I haven't recovered. If you laughed, blushed, or whispered same at least once, welcome. You're one of us now. Like the video, subscribe BL without labels. Stay curious for next story. Support us with commenting blue heart, white heart. And remember, sometimes the shy ones are hiding the boldest hearts.